our cells to replicate, messing them up like a coke-fueled rock band destroys a hotel room after a...
Healthy people aged 20 to 40. Additionally,
an estimated 500 million people infected, between 50 and 100 million dead. A world torn apart by war and by a strange, deadly new disease. It swept across the world, leaving nowhere untouched. It was so deadly, rumors spread through the streets that the Black Death had returned. This was the Spanish flu of 1918, the deadliest pandemic of the 20th century. Epidemics have infected societies throughout history. Usually epidemics come and go, but some truly stand out for their viciousness. In recent history, there has been no pandemic more devastating than the flu of 1918, sometimes called the Spanish flu or swine flu. It killed about 675,000 in the United States alone. The outbreak came in the midst of World War I, and the flu would actually kill more troops than combat. The flu of 1918 was so deadly it killed more Americans than World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. Yet Spanish flu was horrifying for even more reasons. It was very contagious, and it killed extremely quickly, sometimes in as few as 12 hours. It killed people in the prime of their lives, with the most victims being young, healthy people aged 20 to 40. Additionally, it killed some of its victims in bizarre, brutal ways, completely unlike a typical flu virus. Some symptoms actually closely resemble the plagues, which killed millions in the Middle Ages. But scientists have analyzed the pathogen's genome and verified it was not Black Death, which killed millions in 1918. It was just the flu. This video will cover how the flu began and how it spread across the world, the bizarre symptoms that made it so deadly, and how the flu pushed society to the very brink of collapse. If the epidemic continues its mathematical rate of acceleration, civilization could easily disappear from the face of the earth within a few weeks. Victor Vaughn, Surgeon General of the Army, October 1918. No one can be absolutely sure where the pandemic originated, but there are several theories. In northern France, there was an outbreak of a flu-like disease at a British military base in 1917. The base was located in a swampy area with lots of waterfowl and pigs. New flu epidemics often arise when people have close contact with sick birds or pigs. There was a separate outbreak of respiratory disease among soldiers from Southeast Asia who fought in World War I from 1916 to 1918. Most flus start in Southeast Asia, and some historians argue the soldier may have brought a new virus to Europe. But historian John Barry makes the case in his fascinating book, The Great Influenza, that the flu may have originated on a farm in rural Kansas by jumping from infected pigs to humans. Indeed, the first officially recognized cases of the Spanish flu emerged at a military base in Kansas. The U.S. had just entered World War I, and training and industry had ramped up at a rapid pace as the war machine fired up. But in rural Haskell County, Kansas, a war of another type was quietly beginning. Haskell County was in the grip of a deadly outbreak of what seemed to be a mysterious new disease. People in the community, farmers mostly, may have caught the new disease when a pathogen from sick pigs jumped species and began infecting humans. The new virus, the swine flu, was shockingly contagious and extremely deadly. A local doctor was terrified by the death toll of the new virus and contacted the U.S. Public Health Service for advice. His concern was noted, but nothing else was done. After all, it was a tiny rural backwater. How could it spread far in such a sparsely populated area? Slowly the virus began to die down as it ran out of new people to infect. Perhaps it would have stopped there had the times been different, but 1918 was the perfect breeding ground for a worldwide pandemic.
Something out of a horror movie. Extremely painful and terrifying. First you get a fever, then uncontrollable diarrhea, then you begin hemorrhaging blood. And while all that's hitting you, you lose touch with reality and become delirious. Finally, within days, you are dead. West Africa is currently in the midst of by far the worst case of the disease since it was first discovered in Africa back in 1976. This year's outbreak has been traced to a 2-year-old boy who died on December 6, 2013 in a village in Guinea. He probably got the virus by eating contaminated food that had been drooled or defecated on by a bat, or, as is common in this part of the world, had eaten some bat for dinner. Bats, researchers believe, are the carriers of the disease. As if the 2-year-old's death wasn't tragic enough, a week after it killed him, it killed his mother, his 3-year-old sister, and then his grandmother. Now, it's customary in some African villages to prepare a body for burial through the extremely sanitary cleansing ritual that involves evacuating the body of all food and excreta, often using just bare hands. Since the disease is spread by bodily fluids getting into the eyes, nose, or mouth, it's no surprise that 2 people who traveled to the grandmother's funeral caught Ebola and brought it home to their villages. After escaping ground zero, the highly contagious, undetected virus was off to the races. By the end of March, Ebola had reached Liberia, and in June, the first case was reported in Monrovia, Liberia's capital city. That's when outbreaks like this really start to spread, when the infected people make their way to population centers during the incubation phase before their symptoms begin. A group of people from Sierra Leone who had traveled to an Ebola victim's funeral brought the disease back across the border, and in late July the virus had hit Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown. Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone are 3 of the 17 nations that form the Economic Community of West African States, whose combined territory is roughly half the land area of the United States, but with a population roughly the same at 340 million, it's about twice as dense as America. And since the disease is easily passed from person to person, and there are lots of people here, it's crucial to get outbreaks like this under control as quickly as possible, especially since a staggering 47%, or 2,984 of the just over 6,400 people who have been sickened by this strain of Ebola have died. So understandably, this is terrifying to neighboring countries, who have responded by shutting down their borders. Still, Nigeria, the largest country in Africa by population and economic output, couldn't keep the disease beyond its borders when an infected Liberian-American man named Patrick Sawyer flew into Nigeria's largest city and died shortly thereafter. A Nigerian doctor named Stella Ameyo Adedeva stopped Sawyer from leaving the hospital, stopping the spread of Ebola to the 21 million people living in Lagos. Sadly, Dr. Adedevo contracted Ebola and died, but she left this world a hero by helping to successfully limit the outbreak to just 21 cases and 8 deaths in her country. No new cases have been reported in Nigeria in weeks. Liberia's experience, however, has been the exact opposite. The disease is out of control there. Cases doubled in the 3 weeks between August 31st and September 22nd. As a response, Liberia's Harvard-educated president, Nobel Peace Prize winner Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first female head of state in the history of Africa, had no choice but to order a lockdown of a highly infected slum in the capital. This didn't last long, though, as an angry crowd attacked an Ebola center and freed the infected. The second hardest hit country, Sierra Leone, has resorted to an unprecedented 3-day nationwide lockdown of its 6 million residents in an effort to halt the disease.
Content destroys a hotel room. All the hand sanitizer in the world can't save us from some of history's nastiest viruses and the horrifying diseases they cause in humans. And we know you're just itching to hear Virus. The new virus is a coronavirus, which is a family of viruses that include the common cold and viruses such as SARS and MERS. This new virus was temporarily named 2019 nCoV. WHO has been working with Chinese authorities and global experts from the day we were informed to learn more about the virus, how it affects the people who are sick with it, how they can be treated, and what countries can do to respond. Because this is a coronavirus, which usually causes respiratory illness, WHO has advice to people on how to protect themselves and those around them from getting the disease. Since it's a new strain, there is no specific vaccine that can treat it. However, according to the WHO, many of the symptoms can be treated, and therefore treatment based on the patient's clinical condition. The symptoms of most coronaviruses are similar to any other upper respiratory infection, including runny nose, coughing, sore throat, and sometimes a fever. In most cases, you won't know whether you have coronavirus or a different cold-causing virus, such as rhinovirus. You could get lab tests, including nose and throat cultures and blood work, to find out whether your cold was caused by a coronavirus. But there's no reason to. The test results wouldn't change how you treat your symptoms, which typically go away in a few days. But if a coronavirus infection spreads to the lower respiratory tract, your windpipe and your lungs, it can cause pneumonia, especially in older people, people with heart disease, or people with weakened immune systems. There is no vaccine for coronavirus. To help prevent a coronavirus infection, do the same thing you would do to avoid the common cold. Wash your hands thoroughly with soap and warm water, or with an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Keep your hands and fingers away from your eyes,